So this unit of the course is yet another dramatic shift. Last time we were talking about Darwin and the development of the idea of natural selection and how Darwin made use of a utilitarian background, a romantic background, and changed the way science was considered and conducted through his extraordinary efforts at classification, at observation, classification, and then theorizing. Darwin's naturalization of ethics, his naturalization of morality were revolutionary at the time and had enormous repercussions all over the world, and they still have repercussions today. But we're going to move back across the channel this week, and in this unit we're going to be talking about two very different kinds of thinkers, Charles Baudelaire, a French poet, and Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher. Now, what do they have in common? They both are concerned with intensity rather than morality. And that's a headline for this week. Intensity replaces morality. And both of them are thinkers whose work becomes very important for postmodernism much later. We'll talk more about that as we go through the reading, but just as a point of orientation, Baudelaire and Nietzsche reject the hierarchies that had governed ethics, politics, and aesthetics, and in so doing developed a framework for making poetry and philosophy, respectively, that was outside of the traditional hierarchies in Western culture. And that anti-foundationalism, it's a word we'll use more towards the end of this course, their anti-foundationalism, their rejection of the standard hierarchies, will be appropriated by postmodernists after the Second World War. Of course, neither of them could have anticipated that at all, writing in the second half of the 19th century. So today we're going to focus on Baudelaire. We're going to spend quite a bit of time just reading the prose poems. I'm going to use this edition of Paris Spleen to remind you of the reading. I hope you've done the reading at home or wherever you do your reading, in a cafe or lying on a grassy knoll somewhere. But we'll refresh your memory and try to organize some of those prose poems in light of the themes of this course. The heading for my discussion of Baudelaire is From Dissection to Permeation. And it's not a very elegant phrase, but what I'm getting at here is that Flaubert, we talked about a few weeks ago, Flaubert emphasized this dissection was revenge. Flaubert thought that by analyzing the bourgeois society around him through narrative, by showing it in all its horrifying banality, that he was giving you a way to condemn or reject or distance yourself from it. Flaubert didn't express opinions. No, he actually said several times that I should not express, as an artist, I should not express an opinion about the world. My job is, like God's, to create the world. Flaubert was not a modest artist. He was the most ambitious artist. He wasn't expressing opinions, but he was dissecting the world around him in a way that would distance his readers and his fellow artists from it. Baudelaire certainly engaged in a kind of dissection, but for Baudelaire the point was to plunge into the world. Remember, Flaubert talked about going up in the world only up to your navel. He said he wanted safe art. He didn't want to get infected by the world. Baudelaire literally was willing to get infected, and in fact, he dies of syphilis. But he plunges himself into the world, into drugs, into sex, into the crowd. He plunges himself into the world, But that's not enough. He also wants to make, is destined to make great art from the world. So about his times, Baudelaire is coming of age in the middle of the 19th century. He's a bit of a mama's boy, I guess we could say. You can look up some biographical tidbits about Baudelaire, but for our purposes, I want you to understand that Baudelaire is very much torn by his affection for and dependence on his mother and his real hatred for his stepfather. Baudelaire's mother remarries after her husband dies, and they don't know. Baudelaire's stepfather is an army officer, and he arouses all of Baudelaire's aggression against authority, against stodgy conventionalism. His parents, they try to send him away. They send him on a boat trip to just kind of toughen him up. Baudelaire escapes and makes his way back to Paris. The story is that during the revolutionary times of 1848, Baudelaire joins in the crowd of revolutionaries, but he's after his stepdad. He's after authority generally, but when they talk about what should we do next, we revolutionaries, the Baudelaire says, we have to kill General Opique. That's his stepfather. He wants to he is consumed with anger against the parental generation and against authority, and is willing to fight it. His parents, his father died when he was quite young. His mother doted on him, loved him greatly. Then she marries a new guy, a military officer. And Baudelaire's, he is your hipster druggie. And so they say, you go to school in Lyon. You know what happens to him in school? He gets kicked out of school. Why? Because he was passing a note. Somebody was passing him a note in class. You know the story? So he's passing him a note in class, and the teacher said, "Just like I did. This was just a little staged Baudelairean moment. You hadn't read the script." In Baudelaire's case, he said to them, "Give me that note. You're passing notes. Give me the note." Baudelaire said, "I will not give it to you, monsieur." Or words to that effect. "Give me the note." I know. "I will never violate the confidence of my compatriot." Or words to that effect. And so they kick him out. Gets kicked out of school, which Baudelaire said, "Woohoo!" So his parents don't know what to do with this guy. So they send him on a boat to India. Study abroad! What are you laughing about? What do you think your parents do? What do you think we have at Wesleyan? It's called exporting social tension. Don't tell that financial aid. Go abroad, yes. I'm kidding. But they did send him on a boat to India, and he loved the boat for a while. All that immensity and all. But then he got really freaked out and needed stimulation, shall we say. And he left. He got off the boat. He made his way back to Paris. And then when revolutions occur in 1848, this we don't know. I don't know if this is true, but it's apocryphal. It's a story about Baudelaire. He's in a mob, and they're running through the streets of Paris in February 1848, and they have the guns, and they're all like, "Where should we go? Where should we go to make revolution?" And he's like, Le General Opique. We have to kill the General Opique. Guess who that was? His stepfather. They're like, "Who's that?" He says, "Don't worry, he's very powerful. We must first kill him." It's so great. Can you imagine that? The part? They're like, "Okay, let's go get him." But they were a bunch of young revolutionaries who were rather drinking and smoking dope and talking about poetry, and so they didn't get the General Opique. So what Baudelaire does, again, this is what one says. These are stories one tells about it. It's hard to know if this really happened. But he gets a gun, and he aims, and he shoots a clock. You know that from here, the tyranny of time. What would be a revolution? Stop this. Stop these clocks.
Why do we have class during a certain amount of time? Why do we have an hour and 20 minutes on Baudelaire, an hour and 20 minutes on Nietzsche? Because that's the way we package your education, so it's more convenient for faculty members to do their thing and go home and do their own work. It's more convenient for you to get credit by showing up in class. Doesn't really matter if you do anything, you just have to be here. It's very convenient. But for Baudelaire, it's like, that's the tyranny of it. Just blow it up. Shoot the clock. Stop time. And then see how it feels to be in the world without an expectation that you have to be somewhere else soon.
Remember, there is a revolution, February 1848. It seems to go so well. The conservative monarch, well, not that conservative, Louis Philippe, he is deposed, and then, but by June of 1848, the workers are massacred in the streets. They get a dictatorship by end of 1851 under Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, a kind of resurgence of conservative authority in France, and for our purposes with Baudelaire, most importantly, what you get is the remaking of Paris. The remaking of Paris by Baron Haussmann, and this is, we talk about this as the Haussmannization of Paris. And what that means is that the city is architecturally reconstructed. That is, these Grand Boulevards, the big wide streets that you know of from the pictures of Paris, the Champs-Élysées, for example. These are constructed during this period, and it is an immense civic undertaking where entire neighborhoods that had been much the same for centuries are bulldozed, they're destroyed, and you have these major arteries carved out through the center of Paris. And this is the most important modernization project in urban Europe that had taken place until that time. And Baudelaire's poetry is in some ways a response to that project. And I want to just give you a few facts about it. Baron Haussmann really changes the nature of the city. Before 1840, more than 60% of Parisians don't leave their neighborhoods. They really stay in their neighborhoods all the time. You get your food there, you have your artisans there, your friends and family, or right in your little quartier, your little neighborhood. And that completely changes as Paris develops economic centers that people travel to in the city. And the city becomes an integrated whole, and modernization ensues. In the late 1850s, about 20% or more of the population of the city is involved in rebuilding Paris. So from 1853 to 1870, Paris becomes a new kind of place. New kinds of lights illuminate the boulevard. New kinds of people you see all the time. You bump into people you never would have seen before, and that bumping into people you never would have seen before, that becomes the material for Baudelaire's poetry.